righteous. And the reason he was righteous was because of verse 8, where we find out because of simply God's grace. It says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Here's what I want you to get. Is again, his righteousness, his example of faith. It wasn't a guy who had it all together, who never made any mistakes. But listen, what I think he gives us a picture of, and I think reminds us of, is listen, that sometimes the greatest examples of faith, it's not in the times, get this, when everything is going right, but I think oftentimes when it seems like everything's going wrong. You know, I mean, listen, he was an example of faith. He was an example of pushing through, of leaving a legacy of faith, of building the boat, of building the ark, of investing in this rescue plan. Not when everything was going right. But he was an example of faith when all the world around him seemed to be going wrong. See, he was an example of faith. And listen, listen, I think sometimes some of the greatest examples of faith, again, is not when we have all of our act all together, when we got all the answers, but sometimes, our faith is proven most, when in terms of how we face when the job doesn't go as planned, when the relationship doesn't go as planned, when the dream doesn't go as planned. See, Noah was righteous not because he was blameless, but because in so many ways he was relentless. He was a picture of faithfulness. Even when the life, and even when his work, and even when things didn't go the way he planned, maybe even dreamed or even thought they would go. But rather than throwing faith out the door, he chose to walk in faithfulness. And when the storms came, he was an example of where to run to and who to run to, even when those storms were caused by his own actions. Listen again, he's a picture, an example of just the power of grace in so many ways, of getting back up. In fact, I like one of my favorite verses, Proverbs 24:16 says, though a righteous man falls 7 times, he will get up. See, being an example of faith is not always having it all together, not always having all the answers, always doing it right. Sometimes it's pressing on, getting back up, even when life seems to go all wrong around you. And listen, this is so significant because I think when it comes to our next generation leaving a legacy, listen, I've heard it said this way, and I think it's so true, is that a faith that hasn't been tested can't be trusted. And one of the greatest tests isn't when the world's all great and rosy and sunshiny, but sometimes when life is tough and life is hard and life is difficult, will you press through? Will you be faithful? Will you keep your eye focused on building a legacy that's bigger than just you? But listen, it's not just being faithful and focused on building a legacy that's bigger than you, building something that extends beyond you. It's a faithfulness, it's a determination, it's a resilience to stay focused not just on the places and the things that matter most, but on the people that matter most. This weekend is the start of U.S. Open. Any golfers in the house? All right, so I'm going to have to do a little explaining here with you, but I'm not actually typically much of a golf watcher, except for the majors. I do like to watch some of these major tournaments, like the Masters, and again, like this weekend, the U.S. Open. And one of my favorite golfers is Phil Mickelson. I love watching him play because he takes a lot of risks on the course, and I mean, he was kind of a guy who, for a number of years, he would constantly come in second, and it was only probably about. Maybe about 5-6 years ago, he started finally kind of break through that, constantly becoming runner-up, and he went on to win 3 of the 4 majors. There's 4 major tournaments in golf, but the one major he's never won is the U.S. Open. And it's interesting because last year he had an opportunity to go into it, and it was a course in Wisconsin which the course designers actually said was built almost with Phil Mickelson in mind, like his game, how he hit the drives, how the greens laid out. It was almost like tailored fit for Phil Mickelson, and yet Phil Mickelson would kind of shock the golf world a couple days before the start of the tournament when he informed everyone that he was not going to be at the U.S. Open. And so he shows up at the press conference, and they're expecting that he's going to tell them, I'm sick, or I've got this injury. But he doesn't do that. He informs them he's not going to be there because his daughter was graduating from high school that weekend. And she was going to be the valedictorian of her class, and she's giving this speech, and he's like, by the time I were to make it back from there to Wisconsin, it would be too late. And it was, I'm gonna be there. I want to be there for my daughter. And one of the reporters kind of pressed him on it and asked, hey, don't you think you might regret kind of this opportunity? You're getting up there in age. You're not going to have that many more opportunities to win one of these majors. And he said, absolutely not. What I would regret is missing my daughter's graduation. See, a lot of us, we can tend to do what I think so many golfers do, and and probably a lot of the golfers that day is that we all want to be a legend, right? We want to make a name for ourselves. We want to, do something that kind of leaves our mark. But I love what Phil is. Phil will ultimately go down. He'll be a legend in the golf, but Phil wasn't concerned about being a legend. He was concerned with leaving a legacy. He was concerned with leaving a legacy. And I love that kind of, just his willingness and his courage to sit there and to choose really to stay faithful to the commitments that he made to the ones that matter most in his life. Listen, again, being an example of faith, it's not always the glamorous things. It's not always the big steps of faith. Sometimes it's the small acts of faithfulness. You'll keep in those commitments, especially to those that are closest to us, that matter most to us. And that's really sort of, I guess, kind of my question for us as we wrap this thing up tonight. In fact, I'm going to invite Eric up, is really the question is, do you want to be a legend or do you want to leave a legacy? Truth is, when I think of my boy is that, at the end of the day, it's funny, sometimes I always stress and, think, man, obviously I want to see a church grow. It'd be great to have a great ministry and, end up on TBN with purple hair and perfectly parted hair. It'd be awesome. But, the truth is, my boy could care less about that. He'd care less about that. He'd care less how this message goes. He doesn't care about those things. Truth is, your kids, they don't care if you get that promotion at work. I mean, at the end of the day, they really don't care if you get that corner office. I mean, they don't care about that stuff. What they care about is that you're there. That you show faithfulness by showing up, by being there, but by choosing to leave a legacy and being more concerned with that than just simply being a legend. And listen, you think about this life it's so short. It's so short. Our time is so brief. In James 4, it says our life is but a mist. It's but a vapor. And I don't know about you, but when I think about the brevity of the moments, and it's funny, my boy, he just had his last day of second grade. It was just this reminder of just how fast time goes by, how short and how limited those opportunities are to invest in his life, to be an example of faith in his life, to be a preacher of righteousness in his life, to pastor my son. And for some reason, that question just keeps kind of going back over my head time and time again, just reminding me, listen, do I want to be a legend? Am I going to invest my life and waste my life in a lot of ways just trying to make a name for myself? Or am I going to commit my life to actually leaving a legacy of faith, of investing my life in building the things that matter most? Kingdom purpose things that go beyond me, that have the power and the potential to rescue others. And will I invest my life in the people that matter most? Will I be a pastor to my boy, a pastor to my family? Will I invest my best in what matters most? With every head bowed, every eye closed, I want you to just